Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law. This is an emergency impeachment stream. I don't know how long we'll be able to do this because I actually have other things to do for my day job today, which I really don't want to do, but that's what we have to do. So we need to talk about what's happening in the United States Senate right now. And what's happening in the United States Senate is not clear because they voted to have witnesses, but unclear how many witnesses or what the nature of the witnesses are or what's going on. So what was supposed to basically be happening today was supposed to be closing arguments. So finishing up closing arguments from the two sides, we were going to have the make a campaign ad portion of the day where all the senators speak up and make their respective campaign ads. So that was that. And then we were going to have a vote at some point this afternoon. That looks like that's not happening now. Now what looks like it's happening is this is going to go on forever and will never stop. It looks like there may not be any limit to where this can go to. Because if we're going to start calling witnesses to this thing, the list of witnesses is immense. It's never ending. You have to call everyone with personal knowledge. Or you could call everyone with personal knowledge. Everyone who is a witness. So what are the total number of witnesses that are available? Well, that would be like every member of Congress. That would be all the staff of the Congress people and the staff of the Capitol building. That would be the police that were there. That would be the military officials who are responsible for those officials. That would be people from the White House. That would be the rioters themselves. They're all witnesses. So the list of witnesses is immense. We're talking hundreds and quite possibly thousands of witnesses. And depending on how we want to do, because the incitement, as I pointed out, did or did not happen based on what Trump said. So everyone who is a witness to what Trump said, which would be everyone who went to the rally. So that's like 100,000 people that we could theoretically depose. The list of witnesses is immense and never ending. So, yeah. So we're going to try to figure out what the Senate just voted on, because I'm not sure they know what they voted on. So we're going to watch some clips from C-SPAN and try to figure out what the hell they just voted on and what the scope of this might be. So we're learning all about this in real time. So you forgive me because I'm confused, and I think the Senate themselves is confused. I don't think the Senate themselves know what they just did. That's why they're doing a quorum call. Right now they're doing a quorum call, which is just basically an excuse to have a private conversation about what the hell just happened. So they're currently discussing privately what happened. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch a couple clips here from today and try to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to be skipping around a lot and looking for some key moments before anyone complains about this. And we're just going to see what happened and try to put together what people said. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Senators. Over the last several days, we presented overwhelming evidence that establishes the charges in the article of impeachment. We've shown you how President Trump created a powder keg, lit a match, and then continued his incitement even as he failed to defend us from the ensuing violence. We've supported our position with images, videos, affidavits, documents, tweets, and other evidence, leaving no doubt that the Senate should convict. We believe we've proven our case. But last night, Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler of Washington State issued a statement confirming that in the middle of the insurrection, when House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy called the president to beg for help, President Trump responded, and I quote, "Well, Kevin, I guess these people are more upset about the election than you are." Needless to say, this is an additional critical piece of corroborating evidence, further confirming the charges before you, as well as the president's willful dereliction of duty and desertion of duty as Commander-in-Chief of the United States, his state of mind, and his further incitement.
Yeah, but that wouldn't be, even if we wanted to confine it to this conversation, and there's no logical reason to confine it to this conversation, we would have to at least try to depose the president and the senator who actually had the conversation, and this other person who apparently overheard the conversation, and who else was in the room on both sides, who else on staff was there. So even if we wanted to confine it to this conversation, you're talking about, I mean, you have to make a guess and who was listening on the White House side and who was in the room or who was listening on the phone. But you have to make a guess. But you're talking about, I don't know, 6 people, 10 people maybe, just for that one conversation. And if we're interested in corroborating evidence or lack thereof for the incitement or the insurgency, you know what is really good corroborating evidence for the insurgency? All the people who are insurgents. That would be outstanding corroborative evidence. So all those people would be relevant. Yeah. So if we're going to bring in this one thing, man, this has no end.
Of the insurrection on January 6th. For that reason, and because this is the proper time to do so under the resolution that the Senate adopted to set the rules for the trial, we would like the opportunity to subpoena Congresswoman Herrera regarding her communications with House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, and to subpoena her contemporaneous notes that she made regarding what President Trump told Kevin McCarthy in the middle of the insurrection. We would be prepared to proceed by Zoom deposition of an hour or less, just as soon as Congresswoman Herrera Beutler is available, and to then proceed to the next phase of the trial, including the introduction of that testimony shortly thereafter. Congresswoman Beutler further stated that she hopes other witnesses to this part of the story, other patriots, as she put it, would come forward. And if that happens, we would seek the opportunity to take their depositions via Zoom, also for less than an hour, or to subpoena other relevant documents as well.
And the defense, of course, wants the opportunity to depose those witnesses and ask questions and call their own witnesses. And the wonderful thing about subpoenas is you don't need patriots to come forward. You can say who else was in the room, and then you subpoena those people and say who else was in the room, and then subpoena those people, and so forth and so on. And are there any notes of who was in the room? Probably. Or is there any notes of who's on the phone call? Almost certainly. There's a White House log somewhere of who was on the call. Subpoena all those people. That's what subpoenas are for. They don't have to come forward. That's the point of subpoenas. So you want to wait for them to come forward. It's like the defense is like, I want to wait for them to come forward. I want to subpoena the White House logs. I want to subpoena every person who was on the call. And also I want to subpoena all the people who were insurgents, apparently, because they're all relevant. I mean,
Mr. President, thank you. Senators, good morning. And good morning to the American people. The first thing I want to say on the issue of witnesses is that the House manager just got up here and described the articles of impeachment and the charges. There is no plural here. That's wrong. There's one article of impeachment and there's one charge, and that's incitement of violence and insurrection. What you all need to know and the American people need to know is, as of late yesterday afternoon, there was a stipulation going around that there weren't going to be any witnesses. But after what happened here in this chamber yesterday, the House managers realized they did not investigate this case before bringing the impeachment. They did not give the proper consideration and work. They didn't put the work in that was necessary to impeach the former president. But if they want to have witnesses, I'm going to need at least over 100 depositions, not just one. The real issue is incitement. They put into their case over 100 witnesses, people who have been charged with crimes by the federal government, And each one of those, they said that Mr. Trump was a co-conspirator with. That's not true. But I have the right to defend that. The only thing that I ask, if you vote for witnesses, do not handcuff me by limiting the number of witnesses that I can have.
I mean, this guy is completely right. Right. For everything he says is right. First of all, there is only one charge. There's only one article of impeachment. So nice little note, catching them out on the plural. That was a nice little touch there. And then he points out what is a completely correct statement. It's like, I need hundreds of witnesses. I need hundreds of depositions, because every single person that has been brought up by the FBI so far, and there are more people yet unknown. So we have all the people that we've talked about on FBIT and all the people we haven't covered yet, plus John Doe's 1 through insert other number here, depending on. But yeah, I mean, all those people are material witnesses. And if the prosecution, House manager's argument is all those people are co-conspirators with Trump, well, that makes them pretty relevant witnesses now, doesn't it? And the defense would have an opportunity to interview or subpoena all the purported co-conspirators, all of them, because they would be material to the charge of incitement, because that's the nature of a conspiracy, right? Everyone who's part of the conspiracy is a relevant witness. And the nature of this, apparently the nature of this conspiracy is everyone who stormed the Capitol at a minimum, which the FBI estimated, and I don't know if it's changed because it's been a while since I read anything, but the last thing I heard on this was 2 weeks ago, or yeah, about that, where the FBI estimated 800 to 1,000 people. I don't know if that estimate has changed, but let's say it's 800 to 1,000 people. At least all those people, and also a lot of people who didn't do it, because presumably a lot of people who didn't storm the Capitol also understood what Trump was saying and didn't understand him to be commanding. So there might be a lot of people who are like, well, that wasn't my understanding of what Trump said. I didn't understand a command. So all those people who didn't storm the Capitol would also be relevant, because that wasn't what I understood him to be saying. So the list of witnesses is John Doe's 1 through 100,000, potentially. I mean, there's no end in sight. This is the nature of this thing, and the defense would have a very real and credible thing. It's like, well, if you say that he's a co-conspirator with all those people, and you say he was inciting all 100,000 of those people, because that's the argument, right? I mean, he can't possibly have been only inciting the people that went to the Capitol, because again, when you're looking at the liability, when you're looking at liability for incitement, it doesn't depend on the result. If you're looking for damages, if you're looking for the punishment aspect of it, then you can look to the result. But the actual liability doesn't depend on whether or not things happen. So it was equally inciting whether or not anyone stormed the Capitol or not. I mean, logically. So everyone who stormed the Capitol and everyone who didn't storm the Capitol is equally valid as a witness to what the president did or did not command and what the understanding of that was. So, yeah. And he's like, I need 100 depositions. I'm like, you're going to need more than that. Every single member of Congress is a relevant fact witness. All of them. That means we can put every single member of Congress under oath. Right? Because they are all fact witnesses. They were all there to experience the insurgency. What did you hear? What did you observe? And so forth and so on. You know? All that. It's like, if you want to go down this road, there's no end in sight. And he's right. It's like, yeah, the House managers realized they didn't prove their case because they don't have any actual evidence, because they didn't actually bring anything except hearsay and conjecture, which, as Lionel Hutz would say, are kinds of evidence.
I need to do a thorough investigation that they did not do. I need to do the 911 style investigation that Nancy Pelosi called for. It should have been done already. It's a dereliction of the House manager's duty that they didn't. And now at the last minute, after a stipulation had apparently been worked out, they want to go back on that. I think that's inappropriate and improper. We should close this case out today. We have each prepared our closing arguments. I had 8 days to get ready for this thing, but we each had those 8 days equally together to prepare ourselves. And the House managers need to live with the case that they brought.
Love it.
But if they don't, please, in all fairness and in all due process, do not limit my ability to discover the truth. That would be another sham. And that's the president's position, my position.
And he's right. I mean, Nate the lawyer is here. Hello, Nate the lawyer. I mean, Nate the lawyer knows as a prosecutor, because he's been a prosecutor, he knows that the prosecution, actually has to bring evidence. And it would be a little bit weird, wouldn't it, Nate the lawyer? It would be a little bit weird if we're at closing argument and the prosecution says, you know what I'd really like to do right now is reopen my case and call a whole bunch of new witnesses. That's going to go over super well with the trial judge. Let me tell you right now how well that's going to go over. I'm just now realizing as we're getting to closing argument that I haven't really made my case. So what I'd really like to do, Your Honor, is call a whole bunch of witnesses. Also, I want to call witnesses. I only want to call the one witness, and I don't think the defense should be allowed to call witnesses. Even though we stipulated in advance there'd be no witnesses at this trial. So even though we reached the stipulation, I'd like to go back on that stipulation. I'd like to call exactly one witness, and I don't want them to call any witnesses and all the rest of that. Would that be cool with Your Honor? Even though I, as the prosecutor, have absolutely nothing, and we're getting ready for closing argument, how about we go back to square one and get a do-over? That conversation is going to go super well. Just all the well. That's basically where I was at. I just realized I have no case. I'd really like to reopen now. Okay, that's good.
I should just have it standing by as this is. Mr. Askin. Is this the John?
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, this is the proper time that we were assigned to talk about witnesses. This is completely within the course of the rules set forth by the Senate. There's nothing remotely unusual about this. I think we've done an exceedingly thorough and comprehensive job with all the evidence that was available. Last night, this was breaking news, and it responded directly.
And Nate the lawyer is right that no trial would allow an unlimited number of witnesses. Nate's correct. But we're talking about depositions at this point. We're not talking about people that would actually be called to the stand. So could you have the judge limit the total number of witnesses? Yes, although you can have some cases with lots of witnesses, so it wouldn't be unheard of. But yeah, unlimited is obviously going to be a problem. But you have cases with dozen witnesses or maybe a few dozen witnesses, not exactly completely unheard of. But the actual idea of how many people can we depose, especially when we have material fact witnesses who were there and observed things. I'd like to be able to depose all the people who were there and observe things. I mean, that's a little bit different, I think. But yeah, you would have limits of trial, but it's like I want to be able to actually have discovery to figure out what witnesses are available for my case. Yeah. Okay.
To a question that was being raised by the president's defense counsel.
And Nate, of course, is also right that you can't force the witnesses to testify. There's a Fifth Amendment problem. He's absolutely correct. There's Fifth Amendment problems there for sure. But you still have to be able to ask, and all those people who refuse to offer evidence, that's still a thing. And it would be hilarious if members of Congress are somehow able to invoke the Fifth. I'm not even sure how that would happen, because what is their criminal exposure? But yeah, you're right. But all the people who stormed the Capitol, yeah, but all the people who didn't storm the Capitol presumably don't have exposure. And again, they're relevant witnesses too. So, yes, the Fifth Amendment is still a thing. That's perfectly right.
that we had not sufficiently proven to their satisfaction, although I think we've proven to the satisfaction of the American people, certainly, that the president, after the breach and the invasion took place, was not working on the side of defending the Capitol, but rather was continuing to pursue his political goals. And the information that came out last night by Congresswoman Butler, apparently backed up by contemporaneous notes that she had taken, I think will put to rest any lingering doubts raised by the president's counsel, who now says he wants to interview hundreds of people. There's only one person the president's counsel really needs to interview, and that's their own client. And bring him forward, as we suggested last week, because a lot of this is matters that are in his head. Well, why did he not act to defend the country after he learned of the attack? Why was he continuing to press the political case? But this piece of evidence is relevant to that.
If I may.
And finally, I was a little bit mystified by the point about the article of impeachment, which I referred to. The dereliction of duty, the desertion of duty, is built into the incitement charge, obviously. If the President of the United States is out inciting a violent insurrection, he's obviously not doing his job at the same time. Just like if a police officer is mugging you, yeah, he's guilty of theft and armed robbery, whatever it might be, but he's also not doing his job as a police officer, so it's further evidence of his intent and what his conduct is.
If I may.
Counsel?
First of all, it's my understanding, it's been reported that Mr. McCarthy disclaims the rumors that have been the basis of this morning's antics, but really the rumors that have been the basis of this entire proceeding. This entire proceeding is based on rumor, report, innuendo. There's nothing to it, and they didn't do their work. Just like what happened with Mr. Lee 2 or 3 nights ago, some supposed conversation had happened, and they had to withdraw that. They had to back off of that because it was false. It was a false narrative. But it is one article of impeachment. Yeah, they threw a lot of stuff in it in violation of Rule 23. Rule 23 says you cannot combine counts. It's a defect in their entire case. It's one of the 4 reasons why you can vote to acquit in this case. Jurisdiction, Rule 23, due process, and the First Amendment. They all apply in this case.
He has just the right level of indignity too. It's really working for me.
Let me take my own advice and cool the temperature in the room a little bit. It's about the incitement. It's not about what happened afterwards. That's actually the irrelevant stuff. That's the irrelevant stuff. It's not the things that were said from the election to January 6th. It's not relevant to the legal analysis of the issues that are before this body. It doesn't matter what happened after the insurgents into the Capitol building, because that doesn't have to do with incitement. Incitement it's a point in time, folks. It's a point in time when the words are spoken and the words say, implicitly say, explicitly say, commit acts of violence or lawlessness.
Yeah, I've been saying this for a little bit now.
And we don't have that here. So for the House managers to say we need depositions about things that happened after, it's not true. But if he does, there are a lot of depositions that need to be happening. Nancy Pelosi's deposition needs to be taken. Vice President Harris's deposition absolutely needs to be taken, and not by Zoom. None of these depositions should be done by Zoom. We didn't do this hearing by Zoom. These depositions should be done in person, in my office, in Philadelphia. That's where they should be done. I don't know how many civil lawyers are here, but that's the way it works, folks. When you want somebody's deposition, you send a notice of deposition, and they appear at the place where the notice says. That's civil process. I don't know why you're laughing. It is civil process. That is the way lawyers do it. We send notices of deposition. In the notice of...
I would remind everybody that we will have order in
I don't have...
the chamber during these proceedings.
I haven't laughed at any of you. And there's nothing laughable here. He mentioned my client coming in to testify. That is not the way it's done. If he wanted to talk to Donald Trump, he should have put a subpoena down, like I'm going to slap subpoenas on a good number of people. If witnesses are what is required here for them to try to get their case back in order, which has failed miserably for 4 reasons. There is no jurisdiction here. There has been no due process here. They have completely violated and ignored and stepped on the Constitution of the United States. They have trampled on it like people who have no respect for it. And if this is about nothing else, it has to be about the respect of our country, our Constitution, and all of the people that make it up. And so that I ask, when considering or voting on this witness matter, and to be clear, this may be the time to do it, but again, and everybody needs to know, the backroom politics, I'm not so much into it all, and I'm not too adept at it neither. But there was a stipulation. They felt pretty comfortable after day 2, until their case was tested on day 3. Now is the time to end this. Now is the time to hear the closing arguments. Now is the time to vote your conscience. Thank you.
Mr. Raskin?
We were involved in no discussions about a stipulation, and I have no further comment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Position on that.
This is getting a little out of control.
I would remind everybody, as Chief Justice Roberts noted on January 21st, 2020, citing the trial of Charles Swain in 1905, all parties in this chamber must refrain from using language that is not conducive to civil discourse. I listened to Chief Justice Roberts say that. I agreed with him, and I thought for our colleagues I would repeat it as I did last night. So the question we have before us is whether it shall be in order to consider and debate under the rules of impeachment any motion to subpoena witnesses or documents.
So the actual motion, and this is where we'll stop the coverage because that's all there is really to have. So the actual motion is whether or not it's in order to consider calling witnesses. And they voted 55 votes yes. And now they're unless something has changed since we started covering it, they were having a quorum call. So let's see if anything has changed since the thing started. A quorum call is just to say that there's not enough senators in the room, and the point of it is a delaying tactic. So let me just pull this up real fast and see what's going on. No, they're just talking in the hall, so they're not. It's 12 o'clock, and they're expected to resume at 12:30. So nothing else is going on. So apparently they're having a discussion amongst themselves about what this is going to look like. So we'll see. Wonder what Ted Cruz is saying. We'll listen to a little bit of him live.
But I think if the Democrats want to open this Pandora's box, I don't think it's going to work out well for them.
President Trump himself be one of the witnesses if there are witnesses, and why not?
You know, there is a long tradition in our trials that is reflected in the Bill of Rights that any individual is not required to testify against themselves, to testify at their own trial. I don't think we should attempt to force the president to testify at his own impeachment trial. This is the House managers or the prosecutors. They have the burden of proof. They haven't proven their case. The reason you're seeing this Hail Mary is everybody knows the outcome of this proceeding, which is that President Trump is going to be acquitted. It takes 67 votes to convict. There aren't 67 votes, and those on the extreme far left are angry right now, and today is a reflection of that anger.
Do you think there are any minds that could be changed if witnesses are called?
Sure. I think where we are right now, I think we likely are about 55 votes to convict. I think all of the Democrats are likely to vote to convict. By the way, I think all the Democrats were going to vote to convict on day one. All of the Democrats were going to vote to convict in 2017. Many of these Democrats went on record as Trump was being sworn into as president, saying they wanted to impeach him. So I think on the Democratic side, it's purely political. I think on the Republican side, we've seen 5 Republicans who voted with the Democrats on a couple of procedural motions. I think there's a reasonable possibility those 5 vote to convict. I'd say there are 55 votes to convict plus or minus 2. I think we could probably see a low of 53 and a high of 57. Neither of those are remotely close to the 67 it takes to convict.
And is it a vote on every single witness or just a resolution with an infinite number of amendments? What's your sense?
Well, under the rules, as I understand it, it's a vote on each witness. And so I think Schumer right now is dealing with chaos, doesn't know what to do because they hadn't planned on this. This was supposed to be, last night everyone went to bed being told this was going to be a unanimous consent that everyone agreed to, that we wouldn't have witnesses. And then it was this morning, it erupted into chaos. I'm hearing from multiple senators that the Democratic senators don't want witnesses. And by the way, if we go down the road of witnesses, this impeachment trial could last all of February, all of March, all of April. I got to tell you, I just came from the Republican cloakroom. There are a lot of Republican senators that are saying, all right, fine, if you want to drag this out, every day we're in this trial is a day that the Democratic majorities are not destroying the country, are not passing policies that are killing jobs and putting people out of work and keeping kids out of school. I think Schumer is trying desperately to get out of this this dead end into which they've driven themselves.
How can you drag it on if they have more than 50 votes potentially for
Well, look, there are considerable discussions about that. Under the rules, impeachment is supposed to set aside all other business pending before the Senate. Look, my view from the beginning, I don't think Joe Biden wanted to go down the road of impeachment. I don't think Schumer and most of the Democratic senators wanted to go down the road of impeachment. The reason we're here is the hard left hates Donald Trump, and the House Democrats, they really reflect that hard partisan left. They drove the impeachment. I think Schumer felt he couldn't tell his base no, especially when he's afraid of being primaried from the left in New York. But I think Senate Democrats, they just got committee gavels. They just became chairman. They want to be taking up legislation, moving nominees. I think Senate Democrats are really frustrated right now. We may see a resolution. There are negotiations going on right now that we could see this thing resolved and ended today. I got to say, on the Republican side, I think we're fine however it plays out. I will say this, the outcome that would not be acceptable is for Senate Democrats to say we're going to let the House managers call witnesses, but President Trump's lawyers can't call any witnesses. And look, to be clear, I think it is unlikely that Republicans would vote for only Democratic witnesses and no witnesses for President Trump. I think the Republicans who supported the Democrats on other procedural matters would not support them on a one-sided biased trial, which means if it's a pure party line vote, 50-50, and they have to bring Kamala Harris in to break the tie, I think the whole country would look at a wildly unfair and biased trial. There are many aspects of this trial that ignore even the faintest hint of due process, and I think having a party line vote that says only Democrats get to call witnesses and the defendant in the proceeding doesn't get to call any witnesses, I don't think that passes the laugh test. I think you might even see some Democratic senators say, look, this is ridiculous. If one side gets to call a witness, the other side does. So I don't think we'll go down that road because it's so obviously unfair. But at this point, it's pandemonium.
All right, that's enough of that for now because I got other work, unfortunately, I need to do. So I'd love to continue this stream. I'd love to continue covering this stuff, but I have other things I need to do today, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to pause it out here. So I hope you enjoyed this stream, and we'll see what happens next and whether or not the Democrats want to take back their idea of having witnesses and what that's going to look like. So we'll see, man. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. As always, remember to give it a like before you leave. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already. I'll talk to you guys later, man. All right. Bye for now.